We begin today's lesson by reviewing place value. Let's look at the digits to the left of the decimal. The first digit to the left of the decimal is the ones place. That's represented by the 5. The 2 represents the tens place, the 4 represents the hundreds place, and the 3 represents the thousands place. Let's look at the digits to the right of the decimal. The first place value to the right of the decimal is the tenths place. That's represented by the 7. The second digit, the 1, represents the hundredths place, and the 9 represents the thousandths place. Understanding these place values is very important when reading numbers properly. Reading decimals. Begin by reading the whole number, the number to the left of the decimal, if there is one. The decimal is read as "and" if there's a whole number. Read the number to the right of the decimal as if it were a whole number. Identify the place value of the last digit or digit to the far right. Let's look at a few examples and read them together. We begin with 0.35. In this example, there's no whole number to the left of the decimal. Therefore, there's nothing to read. We start with the number to the right of the decimal, 35. Once we read the number to the right of the decimal, we look to the digit at the far right to identify the final place value. In this case, the 5 is in the hundredths place. To properly read 0.35, we would say 35 hundredths. Let's look at our second example, 34.21. We begin by reading the number to the left of the decimal, which is 34. The decimal is represented by the word "and." We follow that by reading the number to the right of the decimal, 21. Our final step is to look at the digit to the far right, which is the 1, and identify the place value that the 1 is in. Since the 2 is in the tenths place, the 1 is in the hundredths place. 34.21 read properly would be 34 and 21 hundredths. Let's look at our third example, 456.7. Once again, we begin by reading the number to the left of the decimal, 456. The decimal is represented by the word "and." Now we read the number to the right of the decimal, 7. And finally, identify the place value of the digit to the far right. The 7 is in the tenths place. 456.7 read properly is 456 and 7/10. Let's look at our final example, 6 6.452. We begin by reading the number to the left of the decimal, 6. The decimal is represented by the word and. We read the number to the right of the decimal, 452. Finally, we look at the digit to the far right to determine what place value it's in. The 4 is in the tenths place, the 5 is in the hundredths place, and the 2 is in the thousandths place. Therefore, 6.452, when read properly, is 6 and 452 thousandths. Writing decimals as fractions. Begin by writing the whole number, the number to the left of the decimal, if there is one. The number to the right of the decimal is your numerator. The place value of the digit at the far right is your denominator. Let's look at some examples. We begin with 0.4. The number to the left of the decimal is a 0. In this case, there's no reason to write the 0. The number to the right of the decimal is a 4. That 4 becomes your numerator. The digit to the far right is a 4. That 4 is in the tenths place. Therefore, the denominator is a 10. 0.4, or 4/10, expressed as a fraction, would be 4 over 10. Let's look at our second example, 0.62. The number to the left of the decimal is a 0. There's no need to place a 0 before a fraction. Therefore, we look at the number to the right of the 0, 62. That becomes our numerator. Our next step is to look at the digit to the far right, 2. That 2 is in the hundredths place. Therefore, our denominator becomes 100. 0.62, or 62 hundredths, can be written as 62 over 100. Let's look at a few more examples before we begin to do some independent work. We begin with 4.7. The number to the left of the decimal, the 4, becomes our whole number. The number to the right of the decimal, the 7, becomes our numerator. The digit at the far right, the 7, is in the tenths place. Therefore, our denominator is 10. 4.7, or 4 and 7/10, can be written as 4 and 7 over 10. Let's look at our second example, 64.31. The number to the left of the decimal, 64, is our whole number. The number to the right of the decimal, 31, becomes our numerator. The digit at the far right, the 1, is in the hundredths place. Therefore, 100 becomes the denominator. 64.31, or 64 and 31 hundredths, can be written as 64 and 31 over 100. In our final example, we look at the number to the left of the decimal, the 9, as our whole number. The number to the right of the decimal, 702, becomes our numerator. To determine the denominator, look at the digit to the far right. The 7 is in the tenths place. The 0 is in the hundredths place, and the 2 is in the thousandths place. Therefore, our denominator is 1,000. 9.702, or 9 and 702 thousandths, can be written as 9 and 702 over 1,000.